Good morning, it's News from the Roots on Mountain Stream TV. Today is Tuesday, March 20th, 2018. I'm Avram Friedman. This morning I have a guest with us, Dave Krest. Dave was at Kuzu camp over this weekend.
Yeah.
And I thought he's a very interesting man, got an interesting history, and I thought it would make a good interview this morning.
Yeah.
So, Dave, how are you? And tell us a little bit of how did you come to the Kuzu camp?
First of all, to answer your first question, how am I? And what immediately came to me is full of wonder. Wondering what's this is all about, because we didn't do. We're just beginning at zero.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, what brought me was let's see. I read an article in Mountain Express, and actually that magazine or whatever it's called is it's the first time that I ever read that. And I was really impressed with the magazine itself, and the interviews and the people and the consciousness is really really nice. And there was an article about your son's Kuzu camp, and I said, "Whoa, I'm going."
Oh, okay.
That was it.
I think a lot of people have probably had that reaction. Yeah, Mountain Express is an interesting publication in itself. You know, that started out, I don't know, about 20 years ago as Green Line. It was the voice of the Green Party.
Oh, is that right?
But then they sold it to a private organization that still kept. I think it's still a little bit of a green reputation, but more focusing on entertainment in the Asheville area and such.
Was that around when Nader was running for president?
It was, yes. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was still called Green Line back then, I believe.
Yeah, cool.
And it was a much smaller newspaper. And
Well, it shows how, I mean, just reading this, it's like, it shows to me how far we've evolved, humanity. I mean, we're incredible beings. You know, our capacity, I mean, we have no limitations.
Well,
other than what we make ourselves,
True, and what the earth provides. But, there's it seems like we continue to innovate and change the world. For better or worse.
Yeah, but I think, right now it's mostly for the worse, because we've pretty much composted everything. All of our resources, they're dying and dead, and but out of this compost is coming this new consciousness. And I mean, like our youth, I mean, like your son, and even the younger ones, like I just found out a week or two ago about the kids that are, the high school kids with the, the shooting, and how they're coming out and speaking up, especially the young women, and it's like, we're after you, government, or whatever. This is the Z generation.
Yeah, they're not afraid to stand up.
They're not, and it's like Z is the last letter of the alphabet. And in a sense, this is it. Because in reality, we'll either destroy ourselves or we won't.
Yeah.
But, knowing that, it's like, why not live? Why not, go for restoration?
Go for the best that we can do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's kind of what Kuzu Camp is about. It's turning what many people consider to be a problem into an asset, and learning how to do that. And that's one of the most exciting things that's happening in my life, I think, is the Kuzu camp. I mean, there's a lot of exciting things going on right now, but that is certainly a perfect example of how you can turn something bad into something.
That's right.
Into something good and worthwhile.
Yeah. Compost is always good, isn't it? The bad. And what little I learned was phenomenal, because it really supports my philosophy of life. But with the Kuzu or Kuzu, as I guess it's the Western word for Kuzu, and apparently it came from you know, the Japanese
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it Kuzu.
Kuzu.
So
yeah.
we took it as, we put the D in there like it sounded like Kuzu.
Yeah, I have to look up the distinction, but I think, at least to my knowledge, the kuzu, we still have kuzu as a word too, but that refers to the powder. The finished product, that's kuzu powder.
Oh, okay.
But you, on the other hand, you might be right also.
Yeah, so the kudzu is the whole plant.
Well, that's how I think
yeah,
of it,
yeah.
but that may just be my invention.
Yeah.
It could be that it's
Yeah.
all called kuzu
Yeah,
in
and it's
Japan.
all one anyway.
Yeah.
Kudzu, Kudzu, right, yeah.
So you have an interesting life. You currently live in the Old Fort area
Uh-huh.
of North Carolina, just
Yeah.
East of Asheville
I think it's
and
east of,
down
I
the
don't know.
mountain.
I don't know, but it's not far from Black Mountain either.
Yeah.
So we're kind of up there, and
So you're not all the way down the hill, or
No.
are you before you go down to Old Fort, or
yeah, before.
before you go down to Old Fort, in the Montreat area?
Oh, wait a minute, before. Yeah, that's before.
Oh,
You
it depends on
mean-
which direction you're going.
Right. So you mean coming from Asheville?
Yeah. No, you're down the hill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you're down the mountain, I guess.
Oh, okay.
You had mentioned that you were near, what was the name of that community?
Yeah, Three Creeks.
Oh,
Three Creeks.
okay, that's
Three
interesting.
Creeks. It's land that are now friends John and Marilyn Nelson own, and what they do, they had some other property too, and probably before that. But what they do is they buy up land that's possibly going to be taken over by investors and
Oh.
building houses and whatever.
Developers, yeah.
Developers. So they'll buy up, this whole batch of land, which
To prevent it from being
happening.
sold.
Mhm.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah. So
They must be very wealthy people. I
yeah.
imagine.
Well, they know how to use their money and
yeah, it
resources.
can be used for good or bad, right?
Right. Because I really don't know whether they're wealthy. Because I know people that don't have money in the bank, but they know how to maneuver things.
Ah, yeah.
But anyway, they bought up that land and they put it out on the internet, looking for someone to live on the land.
Yeah.
And Jackie wrote back, 'cause she's great at writing and expressing herself. We're the ones.
Huh?
And then we got a notification back that they send everyone, what do you call that, like some kind of a letter where it goes out to everyone,
Yeah.
a form, like a form
Okay.
response, a form response,
Okay.
saying thank you for your
Inquiry or whatever.
inquiry,
Yeah.
we'll get back to you within 7 days, and if we don't feel, but just know that we found someone else,
Okay.
and left it at that.
So you're the only ones that are living
Oh,
on
no.
this big tract of land?
Oh yeah, well, no, we're the fourth family.
Oh, I see. And did you had to build your own home?
Oh no. So anyway, now this just happened like 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
And so anyway, Jackie wrote back, we're the ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then they responded right away on day one,
Uh-huh.
because Jackie wrote about, what we're all about.
Yeah.
And we met them and we got it. So we live in this beautiful cottage right on a stream.
Oh.
3-minute walk from this huge waterfall that you can walk under, and at the waterfall is a small library, like sitting up from the waterfall.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and just trails all over the place. I mean, yeah.
Wow, you are blessed,
We're blessed.
to be able to get that.
Mhm.
And you have to pay rent for
Nothing.
Oh, you're kind of caretakers, in other words.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. Just our presence, you know, just being
Well, this
there.
is really getting more and more intriguing.
Yeah,
So that's,
yeah.
And so you just moved there 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
From
2 weeks.
Arizona, where you came
Let's
from?
see, where were we? No, before that we were in the, you know, the CeeLo
Yes, in Burnsville.
Quaker community.
Yes.
Yeah, we lived there. We lived there for 3 months.
3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's an interesting community as well. That's
Oh,
one of the
boy.
oldest intentional communities in the
boy.
country.
I mean, they're like, wow, I really like their,
Yeah.
you know, I love going to meeting, you know, you just sit there and meditate, just quiet. Nobody's preaching, you know,
Yeah.
just there, just sitting, and wow, it's really empowering.
And yet it's a very active community.
Very active.
Yeah.
Well, the Quakers, I mean, they've been cranking for a lot of years.
But it hasn't been just Quakers for a long time. I mean, there's many other people in the CeeLo community. It's a center of permaculture activity.
Right.
And many other,
Biodiversity.
there's artists
Yeah, that's right.
living there, musicians,
Yeah.
and they have a school, the Arthur Morgan.
Yeah, well, you know more
Arthur
about it.
Morgan
Yeah, right.
School.
Yeah, we lived right down from the Arthur Morgan School.
Okay.
Yeah, beautiful place.
And so you lived there for 3 months, and where did you come from before that?
Just different places, you know. We lived different places on the planet. And then, you know, it was about, I don't know, a month ago that we decided, you know, we're getting close to 80 and, you know, it's time to settle in and decompose. And
Compose and decompose.
compose and decompose, yeah, right. Yeah, well, that, you know, that whole decomposition thing, like how, you know, now we're in a sense over the edge, and we're, you know, closer to this disintegrating.
Mm.
You know, it's like my sight is, you know, getting softer, and my hearing and my movement, and, you know, and all these markings, you know, like an old tree, you know, just like nature. And we're finding that in our quietness, and actually we discovered that at the CeeLo community, you know, just sitting and meditating, that our bodies are disintegrating, and we are integrating into the bigger picture. I mean, that's just the way it feels. And you know, so I become, you know, less arrogant, you know, more compassionate. You know, anger seldom flares up in me anymore, and when it does, I recognize it right off the bat. And it's just a really lovely time. And I really appreciate the dying process, because I spent like over 20 years living in with individuals who were terminal. And I lived in 24/7. We were together, you know, one-on-one, 24/7. I would live with these people. And
Is that what you did for a living? You worked at hospice care centers, or?
no, I attempted. You know, during my breaks, usually mine's serendipity. People find out about me and they'll call me. And, well, I had this long space of time where nothing was happening, and I heard about hospice, and I'll check that out. But I didn't like hospice.
Oh, okay.
And not that it's not doing really, really good things for people, especially the volunteers, because the volunteers are there because they want to be. They're not being paid. They do music, they sit with, they take care of. You know, it's a beautiful thing. And of course the insurance companies love it, because they don't have, you know, that keeps people out of emergency care, and which costs the insurance company a lot of money. And so hospice. And just briefly, you know, the one thing that I didn't appreciate about hospice was that, first of all, it's in total control of the medical establishment and pharmaceuticals. So there's no option to play with the pharmaceuticals. You have to take your medications. And so anyway, I didn't want that. So when I would take on people, there'd be an agreement that I was the primary care person. There was no intervention from the medical establishment or anyone else. And it was an agreement. And I could be fired at any time. You know, if you don't
like
appreciate
what you're getting, then I'm
that's
gone.
right, I'm gone. I'm gone, yeah. And I didn't charge anything.
How did you support yourself?
Oh man, I mean the stuff that the things that people gave me, I mean, it was just amazing. Everything from cars to money to you know, everything.
Isn't that interesting? You know, I've kind of experienced the same thing in my life. You know, where I've worked regular jobs where you get paid for working 9 to 5, etc. You know, and other times I've volunteered my time, and I found that during those times I had greater wealth than the times I was working, because people are very generous, and they tend to be fair and give you what you deserve. Unless you're working for them, then they don't. If it's a matter of business, they try to pay you as little as they can get away with.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Because you know, that whole thing of like Joseph Campbell, you know, he calls it following your bliss. You know, if you don't follow your bliss, you're going to live in hell. That's all there is to it. And so doing like your volunteer, it's like we're doing what we love doing. So naturally, it's got to be great.
And we're doing what we perceive needs to be done.
Yeah. And so the rewards are there. It's not about, oh, how much am I making? I need this to survive, you know, Yeah.
That points to a whole different way of life, doesn't it?
It does. Yeah. And it fits right in with nature. Fits right in with Kuzu.
Yeah, animals and plants don't get paid, and they survive somehow, don't they?
That's right. They live.
Yeah,
they live, you know. A lot of us just survive. You know, we work for money to buy more things, and well. And I think more and more people, the youth are, well, from what I understand, the Z generation, which is from ages 12 to 22, I think, or 23, they have less and less interest in formal education.
You mean the younger generation
that's
coming up now? Well,
that's right. So they're making their own way. Let's see, where do I want?
They almost have to, because education is getting to where you can hardly afford it unless you want to go into debt the rest of your life. And they're not, the jobs that you get, you know, are not that great unless you become a PhD, you know. But if you're just getting a bachelor's degree, it hardly, you know, you still can work up at McDonald's.
Right. And so even, you know, even in that way of thinking, surviving, oh, I'll make $25 an hour if I do this. And, you know, it's like, nah, you know, it's like follow your bliss. It shows, you know, just do what you love to do and it'll work, because that's the way nature works.
And so you found your niche or your bliss in taking care of people who are at the end of their lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was just lovely. I mean, lovely. And the beauty of it is that, again, you know, I would get people who are terminal, you know, from the medical establishments. You know, it's like you have 6 months to live or whatever. And so, you know, the norm is like I come in, they're in diapers, they're, you know, you got to do all that stuff, and with the medications, and when you, of course, when you treat a symptom, it's like turning off an alarm. You know, the body is like expressing itself like something's wrong. Got to get this out, and then it's shut down, the symptom, so there's no more headaches or, you know, the sores on the body, things that kill, you know, bacteria or whatever, you know, and anti-life antibiotics, you know, and yet.
So your immune system shuts down basically and allows your body to be taken over by.
Right, and then the disease is expressed in another way. So like modern medicine looks at it like, say for instance something going on with digestion or in the stomach or colon or whatever, and then so then the symptom is treated here, so the discomfort isn't there, and then it expresses itself with, say, headaches or partial paralysis or hearing impairment, and that approach is seen as separate, where you go see a specialist for this or for this. So the whole person is not included, and that's what I would do. I would assess the situation, and including the person's environment that they live in, their state of being,
Where did you learn this skill?
on my own.
And
Studying, nature, and I mean, like with your profession, it's like, where did you learn? Well, you really can't give it a single answer. Oh, I went to school for, or I have a degree in.
I sort of can do that in a way, because I studied political science and I studied solar energy and the environment, and so it all kind of came together. But those were things I wanted to do when I was in school and what I wanted to do when I got out.
Right, and then you take that and you experience, you pull that into your experience, and it moves from there. Yeah.
True.
Same thing.
Yeah, just one thing builds onto the next. But so how did people find out about you and the work? Just from word of mouth and pretty much?
For the most part, yeah. I really didn't do any advertising. At one point I had, back in the early 80s, I had a clinic and a radio program in Denver, Colorado.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and the radio program, and here I am, like, I don't know, in my 30s or, And my father was, oh gosh, he would listen to my program, and he was so afraid that I'd be arrested, because I'm bashing the system,
Yeah.
You know how it was when you were young, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, I gave that up when it was when right after John Lennon died. So I think that was
1981.
81.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine in Boulder wanted to do a concert in that, and brought in Al Wong, Paul, not Paul Horn, but the Paul. Anyway, great musicians. I mean, they did really great. Anyway.
Paul Winter.
Paul Winter.
Really?
Paul Winter Consort. Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, they were there, and so he called and asked if I'd be interested in, help him promote that. And I said, yeah, I wanted to get out of my clinic. I just didn't like it at all. Yeah.
But so how did you get a radio job? I mean, did you had experience in announcing on a radio, or?
I don't have experience in anything.
So who gave you that job, and how did that happen?
You mean with the radio?
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I had my clinic, and I met a.
So you ran a clinic, like Mother Teresa, basically, or
whatever.
I mean, it wasn't certified.
Oh, nothing. No.
Or it was just
right on the edge.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, and there were times I would fear, when it come up, getting arrested or something, practicing without license.
Yeah.
But it never happened. And so anyway, from there, because like I said, I wanted to get out of there. I didn't like, it just seemed so sterile, people coming to my clinic and we're sitting there talking, and I'm telling them about this and that, and it's like, it just didn't work. So I went to Boulder, and we put this concert together, and in the process I began making house calls and noticing, boy, what a big difference. You come into a person's environment and it's their space. You're in their space, and you can read it and you can read them. You know, it's just much more open. And then after a while I actually made it where we would meet in nature. We'd go up like Boulder Canyon or over to the Flatirons and just walk in nature. And
what a beautiful area that
Yeah.
is. I've spent a little bit of time.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And just being in nature, I mean, you know how cleansing that is, you know, and it's like it's pretty quickly you can get out of your head and more into your heart. Yeah. So then it evolved from that to where I was living in with. My first guy was a guy with cancer, old, 86 years old, Louis Condon, and yeah, anyway, it just evolved from that to where my next person, well, that's when AIDS first came out, was I think in 82. Before that it was called Grid something or whatever, but then it became AIDS, and I met this guy who came to me and he said, "Do you know anything about AIDS?" And I could see that he was asking me about himself. That's usually what. And I said, "Well, what are your symptoms?" And he told me, and I said, "Well, you know, I don't know. We can try it." So I moved in with him in a place called near Libre, Colorado, which was an old commune. And he was a medical doctor. In fact, he was the first person in Colorado to be diagnosed with AIDS, acquired immune deficiency.
And he was a medical doctor himself.
Medical doctor, yeah.
So he was going to you because he felt he was going to die.
He knew he was going to die.
He knew he was going to die, and so
Right.
he was looking. What did he expect from you?
Boy, you know, the only way that the only answer that I have that, you know, comes right up is like, what did we expect from each other? And it was about living. It's about, you know, fully expressing ourselves. I mean, that wasn't in my head then, but, you know, now that I look at it. Excuse me. So anyway, I moved in with him. So that was my first real live-in person. And anyway, he eventually died. And then I went to his friend, Tony Costello, in Hollywood Hills, who had full-blown AIDS. He had the Kaposi's, I mean, the whole shebang. And again, this is when, you know, you have AIDS, you're dead. And so I moved in with Tony, and we went down into LA to the hospital, and policemen were wearing masks and gloves. The medical establishment was wearing masks and gloves. Taxi drivers, bus drivers, I mean, it was incredible. And we went to this hospital clinic thing, and here's all these men in line with AIDS. You know, and they're all like just downtrodden, and we walked into the clinic, and, you know, we saw the nurses, you know, attempting to smile through their masks, and, you know, I see it in their eyes, and Tony said, "I don't want to be here." I said, "I don't either." So we went back to his house, and we just began living. And, you know, one of the things that I use as medicine is food. And so, you know, just to have the system to where it like really works, because when the system works, the brain works better, everything's sharper, things are clearer. You know how it is when we're overstuffed or drink too much coffee or eat too much, and how our thinking is also clouded. And anyway, make that long story short, we went out to Tony's place in Palm Springs, California, and he had a place out there. And we went out, and I was, we were just having a good time. I remember I was doing the earwax candle. Remember that one? Earwax.
Yeah.
I had him laying on the couch. I had the candle, so I had a towel, around his, lit the candle. I'm sitting over in the other chair, and I dozed off.
Oh.
And the candle is right down close to the, when I woke. And so anyway, I took the candle out, and he woke, and we went out for a walk behind his house. And so Tony was about 6'3". He weighed maybe 110 pounds.
Oh, gosh.
Had his arm around my shoulder, and we're walking out there, and he said, "This is the best day of my life."
Mm-hmm.
And right there, it's just like death can be a pleasant experience. Why not? We don't have to go over all drugged up and sick and stinky like most people do. Most people are diapered and drugged and salves and so
Lost all their dignity.
yeah, all of it. And some people want to die, commit suicide. And so it became, after that, it was, some of the people I would ask, do you want to live or do you want to die? And they'd, for the most part, they say, well, yes, I want to live. And then I called that the honeymoon period. That lasted from, say, three days to a week and a half, to where it was just small talk. But then eventually, what I would call the truth that sets us free is when they begin, just sharing all of their anger and fears and hell no, who would want to live in this world? Look at this body. Look at my relationships. Look at the world situation. And so the healing began. After a very short time, the diapers came off. They were able to take care of themselves. But little by little, the drugs fell off until finally, with Sir Harold, who was he was actually the first chair bassoonist for the New York Philharmonic under Leonard Bernstein. Big name, big guy. And he, after we were off of all medications now, almost all of them, and he was on oxygen, and we started with just taking the oxygen off, laying it on his chest, and then laying it aside, but having the machine going, the sound of the machine, and then turn the machine off. This is over, a several day period, and then he didn't need it anymore. He knew he was okay without it. So he called.
Why did he have it to begin with? That's just what they do.
When we need oxygen, it's not that there's not enough oxygen in the air.
Anxiety and all kinds of stuff.
Just to make it simple, and yes, of course, anxiety is all part of that, I'll say, inflammation that happens, and the mucus builds up, and it actually
closes the air passages.
Closes, yeah, everything, and everything from oxygen and other nutrients. So with the dietary change, the attitude change, the working on the anger and the frustrations and the losses, and just cleaning that up, bringing that out, you can breathe. So Sir Harold called the supplier to come pick up the
oxygen.
The oxygen. When the guy got there, he said, "This is the first time I've ever picked up oxygen from a live person."
And that's something.
Because usually they take it when the person's dead,
Yeah.
So anyway.
That's wild.
Yeah. And it's so simple, you know, just because we love, you know, we love to communicate on a real level. We love to be touched. We love to touch. We love to love. I mean, that's the way of nature.
Yeah, and we've lost that in the way most of us die these days. Many of us die in places that are strange to us, in hospital beds or nursing home beds, and with strangers around us who have grown insensitized to people.
Yeah. We've allowed that whole system to take over our life.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a lawyer. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not holding, you know, whatever. I don't know. But, you know, until we realize what we've bought into, we're gonna follow that.
Just since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, probably, you know, it hadn't been that long in human history that that we've become so dehumanized. I think that before there were cars and trains and buses and airplanes, before we had cell phones and computers, and people used to live in villages or tribes, you know, depending on what your culture was, where there was this extended family that people took care of each other. The elderly helped take care of the children. Everybody helped take care of the elderly, and it was just, you know, a much more natural course of action and course of occurrence. And then things changed when the Industrial Revolution came, and people had to go to the other end of the country to find a job, you know, and so families split up, and it became this super nuclear family where it was two people against the world, instead of everybody helping each other in a small village or tribal situation.
It's so true. I never really thought of it that way. And yet that's what we're coming back to, aren't we?
I think we are. Well, I think it's necessary for survival.
That's right. And in a world family, rather than like in ancient times, there were like these little pockets. But now with our communication and everything, it's like there is really only one race, the human race. You know? Yeah, you're right. I like that.
Yeah, I think I think economics now is forcing us back into a more tribalistic community where we, by necessity, must help each other again, because the other system just isn't. It was an experiment and that failed.
Wow. What do you mean?
I mean, the whole system of nursing homes and people just left alone in life at the end of life,
right?
And again, that super nuclear family where it's two people against the world. That's a model that doesn't work.
Yeah.
We need more of a support network than that.
Right.
People are not superhumans that can take on the whole world by themselves.
Yeah, right. We need each other.
Yeah, we need each other. Exactly. Yeah. We need community. We need extended family.
Boy, that's so true.
And I think that we have to come back to that, because I think our civilization will die if we attempt to perpetuate that system. Yeah,
and we are in that process, that dying process, like it's like suicide or murder.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the rich compost, isn't it? Because like you said earlier, we are now forced to, you know, it's like you either go for it or you're going to live in hell.
Yeah.
You know, it's either wake up or not.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, I guess it's we're still evolving
Mhm.
as a race.
Yeah.
The human, the human experiment,
Yeah.
in a sense, the modern human experiment,
Yeah.
where we're living with all of this technology that's way ahead of our own minds, and the social structure is dictating to us rather than us controlling that social structure, and so it's we're kind of learning to accommodate that and meet our own needs at the same time. It's interesting. This morning on the news, there was about an Uber car that a driverless car that hit a woman in Tempe, Arizona, I think it is. Now that there's two ways to look at that. There's people kill each other in cars all the time. I mean, there's some 35,000 people, I think, last year died in automobile accidents. So it shouldn't come as a great shock if one driverless car kills somebody.
And yet it does, because we can point the look, it doesn't work.
Right.
And here there's millions of them doing it, or hundreds, or whatever.
But the other end of that is, what are we doing? Like driverless cars. So if we don't need a driver for a car, then what does the person who used to drive a car do?
Sit there and meditate. You're free to do more. When you use when I use technology consciously, I am freer.
Well, that's true. So you could drive. I could drive from here to Raleigh, and I could read a newspaper, or work on my computer,
or meditate, or just be quiet, or just watch.
Meditate, yeah. That's true. Mm-hmm. But there's a scarier part to that too. It's like if everything gets automated, and human beings aren't required to do the work of survival, do we lose our purpose on the planet?
That's the physical world, It's
yeah.
Like, well, so what? I'm still free to go walk in the woods, or
if there are any woods left to walk in.
Well, there are, and more woods are being available now because we are evolving. People are more friendly than we were even 10 years ago. I mean, I notice it. People are more friendly. They're more, to one another. I mean, it's working.
Well,
and we've gone through some hell.
Yeah.
And there's still plenty of hell out there to.
And there always will be. It's never going to be just black or white, good or bad. It's always going to be some combination of all of these things. But it's
combination, where they good and evil say complement one another. The old saying, I think it's a Rumi one, where there's a meadow where right and wrong don't exist. I'll meet you there. I mean, just to communicate with myself or another person and notice whether I'm being right or wrong, and letting that drift and just being present. It just makes for, and that in reality everything complements the other.
And changes the other.
And changes the other. And because if I'm stuck on one side, I'm not complete. It's like Trump and Bernie. I can be pro-Trump or pro-Bernie and poo-poo the other. Well, it's going to hurt, and I'm going to be hurting others. But when you see the role that's going on either side within myself, it's like, I play with it and see the advantage of everything.
Well, that's interesting. So do you feel that Trump and Bernie sort of balance each other out in a way?
I do. you know, all right, so for instance, like say with, I mean, this is just coming, you know, but, you know, if I want to hear and take in and digest some good stuff that I consider good, you know, that's like, you know, I'll say, look at, you know, go find Bernie, which takes work, because, you know, the drums are beating hard on the one side, you know, on the Trump side, you know, it's like get them and, you know, take over this and get them out of here and, you know, and all that. And so I can go over here and just take a breath, you know, and bring it into here and then see what's evolving out of this. You know, it's like, I mean, since Trump was elected, there's been more people, and again, especially women, really coming into fruiting.
Well, he's certainly caused a reaction among the public. He's caused a lot of people to wake up.
That's right.
And realize that we can't just be bystanders.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's true enough. Yeah, and the truth is that Trump is almost an exaggeration of what was already there. You know, we were already headed in the direction that Trump is bringing us in much more rapidly.
That's right.
But we were headed that direction. And it was kind of like the parable of the boiling frog, you know, if you've heard that
with
before.
warm water, or cold water.
If you just put a frog in a pot of cold water and it slowly gets warmer, he won't know enough to jump out in time to save himself. But if it happens all at once, he'll jump out and save himself. And
here we are. The water's boiling.
The water is boiling with Trump. But if Hillary had been elected, we would have had that slow boil, and it would still be going in the same direction, because she obviously was not interested in curbing climate change. She was, you know, pushing for the fossil fuel industry, and she was in favor of these new pipelines that were getting built, and she wasn't opposed to fracking, you know. And
I didn't know any of that.
Well, that's true. And Trump was the same thing, except his rhetoric is so much more belligerent that you know who your enemy is with Trump. You know, so that's an interesting way of looking at things, but.
Well, it's bringing balance to it. It's like seeing ourselves in others. You know, it's like what I say resist in somebody, I can look within myself and find it. It just takes on another way of expressing itself, but you know, the belligerence I see is in me, the kindness is in me, you know, it's like it's all within me.
True, in all of us, we have it all. It's just a question of, you know, it's interesting, I had a conversation, in 1988 I ran for governor of North Carolina, and there was a guy also running for governor.
How old were you, like 35 or something?
38, yeah.
38, cool.
And there was this other guy who was running from also, and his name was, I can't remember his name, but he was the head of the Ku Klux Klan. And he was
notice, I mean, that was known?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, everybody knew it. Wow. But he was the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan.
Wow.
And his first name was Carroll Crawford, was his name. And I didn't know who he was, and I went to one of these. He was running in the Democratic primary. We were all running. There were 5 candidates, and he came down and he sat next to me, and we were talking about it, you know, and I asked him who he was, you know, and then I realized who I was talking to. I kind of moved away a little bit, but he was explaining to me how he says, "Yeah, I'm a racist," you know. And I said, well, I'm not.
Oh.
You know, he said, oh yes you are.
There you go.
Yeah, and I said, no, I'm really not, you know.
Uh-huh.
But in a way, he was right,
Yeah.
because we all have this consciousness that is fed into us from birth, and we take on certain views and certain attitudes and stereotypes that are absolutely part of our consciousness. The difference is that some of us can recognize that and understand that that's not a good thing, and it's something that we shouldn't be proud of. It's something we try to defeat within ourselves. And then there's the Carol Crawfords of the world who say, I'm a racist and I'm proud of it. You know, and they don't see it as something to be ashamed
Yeah,
of.
and where I can say I'm a racist and I'm not proud of it, you know, like
Well,
it brings it up so I can like really
I have these,
move through it.
yeah, we all have these, you know, attitudes, and,
Yeah.
and it's part of our consciousness that we've gained from living where we live, you know, and
Oh, yeah.
and it's something that we need to defeat within ourselves. And I think that's happening. I do think that we are evolving past.
So did that guy win the mayorship or no? Oh.
No, the governorship? No,
Oh,
no,
governorship.
no, he didn't. He
But
got more.
he was
He got
was
more
a
votes than I
Democrat.
did, though.
He was a Democrat.
Well, we were all Democrats.
Wow.
This was in the Democratic primary in
Uh-huh.
1988. We were all running. The lieutenant governor was going to win. I only ran because I was trying to highlight an issue. North Carolina was slated to become the location of a low-level radioactive waste dump in the eastern
Really?
part of the state, and the industry was trying to keep it quiet. They didn't want people to know about it.
Oh, cool.
So my intention was to let people know about
Yeah,
it,
so
and
you
I
did.
thought the best way to do it would be to run for governor.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. So you did get the
I
news
did,
out there,
and
yeah.
and we beat that dump. That dump never came to North Carolina.
But it went somewhere, huh?
No, it didn't actually, because there are two existing low-level radioactive waste dumps in the country. One is in Barnwell, South Carolina. The other is in Hanford, Washington.
Uh-huh.
And the South Carolina wanted to close the one in Barnwell, but they were not able to because North Carolina pulled out of
Oh,
this
cool.
compact. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank me and
So where is it now?
many other people.
Well, of course, yeah,
Yeah.
always,
Yeah.
yeah. So where is the dump now?
In Barnwell, South Carolina.
Still there?
Yeah, and
I mean, how come? I mean, why did they want to? I thought they would want to move it because it was filled, or is that not how it works?
well, they wanted to move it because it was leaking.
Oh my God, really?
'Cause every radioactive waste dump that's ever existed on Earth has leaked.
Wow.
And it's a terrible, terrible problem. And the solution, first part of the solution, is to stop making the stuff. You know, to shut
Yeah.
down every nuclear
Right.
power plant in
Right.
the world and
Get rid of
stop
the
making
cause,
the
yeah.
stuff.
Uh-huh.
But they haven't done that. They a number, you know, quite a few nuclear plants have shut down. There used to be 130 or so in the United States. Now there's, I think, 99.
Oh yeah.
They are shutting down, and new ones are not getting
As we
built.
speak. Oh, is that right? And new ones are not being built.
Not new ones. There hasn't been a new nuclear plant completed in this country since 3 Mile Island,
All right.
or a new one licensed to be built. They tried building. They're building one in Georgia now that may get completed, but it may not get completed because just like all the other ones that have not been completed, the cost overruns are tremendous, and the amount of energy consumption that they anticipated never materialized.
Yeah, and I would assume also the resistance. You know,
The
people's
resistance has been
resistance.
very strong, yes.
Yeah.
But also, just the cost is. It's ridiculous to build a nuclear power plant in this anywhere in
Right.
this day and age for
Yeah, right.
for any number of reasons, environmental, health,
Yeah.
and economics. It just doesn't make sense, especially with solar and wind energy being the cheapest form of energy right now. So
I remember in Boulder, Rocky Flats, where they built the warheads or whatever. And that was just a small operation. They're still cleaning it up. I mean, they closed it, I don't know, in the 80s.
And Hanford, Washington, the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just terrible, right next to the Columbia River. It's seeping into the Columbia River.
Still.
Yeah, plutonium up there. It's terrible. This has been a great conversation, and we should continue this sometime. I have to
wow, a
finish
whole hour went by?
by giving up almost. But I have to tell our audience what the rest of our programming is for today, and an announcement on Friday. We're having the Poor People's Campaign is coming to Silva. The Poor People's Campaign is a program started by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, really?
Just prior to his assassination, and it was never really taken over by anybody of prominence after that, and it kind of it continued to exist, but on a much lower profile until now, when Dr. William Barber has taken the helm of the national organization for the Poor People's Campaign. Dr. William Barber is the former president of the North Carolina NAACP and the originator of the Moral Monday movement, which you may have heard about. Moral Monday, yeah. And most people in North Carolina know about the Moral Monday movement. And so he's become the national leader of the Poor People's Campaign, which has completely re-energized it. And the issue is economic justice and dealing with every aspect of that, from everybody being able to get a good education and universal health care and a fair living wage.
Gosh.
Yeah. So that's coming to Silva. It'll be at the community table from 3 to 5 on Saturday, this coming Saturday. Later, after News from the Roots at 9:30, we'll be showing music from the Canary Coalition's fundraising event that took place last Saturday at Mad Batter Food and Film. It'll be featuring Old Dirty Bathtub, which is a local band of great progressive bluegrass music. At 10:15, we'll be showing an archived edition of News from the Roots with an interview with Annie Butzner. Annie talks about the rights of the elderly who live in long-term health care facilities and how those rights are very often violated. At 11:15 a.m., we'll be watching the Occupy WNC report from March 6th. This will be an interview with Dr. Ralph Hamlet, who speaks for the Steve Woodsmall campaign. Steve Woodsmall is running for Congress in the 11th Congressional District that's currently occupied by Republican Mark Meadows. At 11:45 a.m., we'll be watching an open mic night at City Lights Bookstore in Silva that took place on March 9th. And that's great. That's local Western North Carolinian writers, poets, and people who just want to write things. Some very well-known people, some just beginners, people who wanted to stand up at the mic that night. And that's a great cultural event. At 12:50 p.m., we'll be watching Women and Politics, a recording at a gathering in Bryson City on Tuesday, March 13th, as part of Women's History Month. Janice and Abbott interviews Dr. Elizabeth Gillespie McCrae, who's a history professor at Western Carolina University and author of a book called Mothers of Mass Resistance. And then at 1:40 p.m., we'll be watching the Poor People's Campaign town hall that took place in Hayward County earlier this month on March 5th to give you a taste of what it will be like when it comes here to Silva. And then at 3:10 p.m., we'll be watching the Martin Luther King Day that took place on the campus of Western Carolina University that was recorded on January 15th of this year. And finally, at 3:50 p.m., we'll be watching Bill McKibben speak in Durham at the first biannual Loose lecture in Durham. and he'll be talking about climate change and what's being done right now, what the state of the global climate is, and the resistance movement that's attempting to phase out fossil fuels. And that'll bring us to the end of our live stream at about 5:10 p.m. Thank you for watching Mountain Stream TV and News from the Roots. And please remember that if you can support Mountain Stream TV by making a donation to the Canary Coalition, you can do that by going online to canarycoalition.org and hitting the donate button, or mountainstream.tv and hitting the donate button on that page, or you can write a check or a money order and send it to the Canary Coalition at P.O. Box 653 in Sylva, Sylva, North Carolina 28779. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.